So the OA is a new original Netflix TV show that I just recently finished watching, and I have to say this one struck a chord with me. I thought it was amazing from the first episode to the last, and there's only 8 episodes. Seems to be a running thing with Netflix at the moment to do 8 episodes. So it's slight comparisons to Stranger Things. I've heard other people talk about that, but what is it about is the question. What does the OA stand for? And it's really open to interpretation, I think, and that's what blew me away about it. Like it can be about spirituality, it can be about mental health, mental illness, it can be about near-death experiences, it can be about life, death, family, friends, struggle, all that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty powerful TV show, and I have to say I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm going to get into some spoilers now, so switch off if you haven't yet seen the show. So the plot for the OA is pretty complex and comprehensive, but it's centered around a character called Prairie, and Prairie goes missing at the age of 21 for 7 years, and her mother Nancy and father Abel get a call about a YouTube video that's recently uploaded, and she looks at it and it's a video of her daughter Prairie jumping off a bridge. So she immediately goes to the hospital where Prairie is. And Prairie's asking all sorts of weird questions like how long was I gone for, did I flatline, strange things. But the immediate thing, which is in the synopsis on IMDb, etc., is that when Prairie went missing 7 years prior, she was blind, and when she's found in the hospital, she can see again. So straight off the bat, that kind of hooked me in, and this is only in the first couple of minutes of the series. So her mother Nancy is understandably shocked and delighted to see her. And her dad Abel is he's brought to tears the fact that she can see. So when she returns home, there's FBI dudes that show up and are pretty perplexed as to the whole situation, and are asking her pretty standard questions like where has she been, and she also showed up with these vicious scars on her back that are described as very hard to look at. So the FBI guys are asking routine questions like where were you? Were you held captive? Were you held captive with others? What happened? How did you get back, etc. And Prairie seems pretty non-present for the entire interview. Almost she's happy to be home, and she's just really, the main thing on her mind is getting access to the internet, as she's looking to contact a guy that she was in captivity with called Homer. So there's some strange fucking things going on straight away. Like A, she went missing for 7 years. B, she was blind when she went missing and now she can see. And C, she has these weird scars or markings on her back. And she just seems a bit, like, it's just a bit strange, the whole situation. So that kind of hooked me in again. Like, and you know, this is first episode, and it's rare to do. It's just setting up all this mystery. You're getting introduced to her parents, you know, Nancy and Abel, who seem like really ordinary, decent, loving people, that are just really happy to have her back, and are trying to just adjust to the fact that she's returned with her sight, which is a miracle. And when she was coming back from the hospital originally, the whole town that she lived in, I think it's Maine somewhere, were outside, you know, praising her as a miracle. You know, it's a miracle return, and it's just a powerful opening to a show. So the main thing on Prairie's mind is to get access to Wi-Fi, and her parents won't allow it. So she goes to an abandoned house where there's a group of teenagers that hang out there. One guy is Steve. He's the guy with the blonde hair there in that picture, and he's a bit of a dickhead. He's a drug dealer, a bit of an arsehole, a bit of a bully, etc. And she asks him for free Wi-Fi or a lend of his Wi-Fi password, and he says, "What the fuck is this? A Starbucks?" and lets his dog loose on her, and some weird moment happens whereby she like calms the dog, and you know, like the one thing about Prairie I'd say is that she has this weird ability, weird aura about her to almost hypnotize people. Like people are just kind of in awe when she's around. Like she just has this kind of presence about her. So she calms the dog, and essentially just walks away. It's a bit of a weird scene, but again, like, hooked me straight away. So we're introduced to a couple of different characters in this scene, key characters that are pivotal to the outside part of this world, or this story, and that's Buck, Jesse, and French, and then also Steve. So in a bit of a turnabout, Steve shows up to Prairie's room and gives her a mobile portable Wi-Fi router, but she asks. And he also asks her to go to his school and to do something for him, because he's about to get expelled for basically punching another student in the face. So she says, yeah, I'll do that, no problem, but I need you to do something for me in return. And he said, okay, cool. So we get to learn a bit more about Nancy and Abel. And Nancy obviously is going through a tough time. She's concerned that her daughter was, hurt, abused, or even tortured, when she was away for the 7 years, and she really struggles with it, which is completely understandable. And I suppose this is what grounds these characters in reality. Imagine the horrors that they must be going through, not knowing where their daughter was. The fact that she can see. Abel seems to take it more in a stride, and he's just happy to have her back. And he's just such a grounded character. They're both grounded in huge reality that it makes the show so compelling, and their character arcs and what they go through later on is just, it's amazing stuff. So as the show goes on, we kind of get to learn more about French, Buck, Jesse, and Steve. And they're all kind of interesting characters. They're all slightly damaged. They're all maybe, like, for example, French is the typical jock guy, but he's taking drugs on the side, so he's not 100% happy with himself. So they're all carrying baggage, and the OA just shows up right at the right time, I guess. And then we're introduced to probably my favourite character in the OA, which is BBA, or Betty, and she's a teacher at the school where all the kids go. And the favour that Steve asked Prairie to return was to go to see Betty and to plead not to have him expelled because he punched another student who sang in a band in the throat because he was jealous or pissed off or mad. So she does that. Prairie masquerades, dresses up, puts on makeup, etc., and shows up and has a real kind of in-depth conversation with Betty and convinces her not to expel Steve, that it would be more challenging for her if she was to try and teach him rather than just expel him. And Betty, or BBA, is kind of taken aback by this again, this whole hypnotizing effect that Prairie seems to have on people works. And so BBA is my favourite character in this whole show. Like, she just seems to have such a good character arc. We really like her in the show. So the favour that Prairie asks Steve is to gather 5 people, has to be 5, and for them to all come willingly and leave their front doors open and to come and meet in the abandoned house where she'd met them all previously. And she sits them all down and says, I have to tell you, I want to tell you a story. And the story is right at the beginning, and I have to tell you how I lost my sight before I can tell you how I found it again. So then we cut to a shot of Russia, and Prairie says that I was born in Russia in 1987, and Steve kind of laughs at this and says, how is this possible? And we find out that Prairie was born, and her real name was Mina, and she was born to a wealthy Russian tycoon. But always as a kid, she has had these premonitions that she's going to be involved in a bus accident and drown. And her dad finds her one morning after having one of these nightmares or premonitions, and her nose bleeds when this happens as well. And he says, we're going to get rid of this nightmare. And they seem to have a really caring, loving relationship, and he seems to love her a lot. So he takes her out to a lake, and it's half frozen over the lake, and he basically pokes a bit of the ice away and gets Mina, as she's known now, to get into the lake and submerge her head. And this is an attempt to rid her of these premonitions or this fear. So these premonitions turn out to be true, and in a couple of scenes later, Mina is involved in a really bad bus crash that seems to have been caused by the Russian mafia. So her dad may have had links to the Russian mafia, and the bus sinks and she goes underwater and essentially drowns. And this is the first NDE that we have, near-death experience scene. So there is an image of Prairie floating to the top of the water, but she actually dies during this bus crash, and she explains this to the group who are on looking, and they're all kind of shocked. Like, is this a mad story? Is this girl mentally sick, or is she actually telling the truth? So when Prairie wakes up, she's in this kind of mystical room with this being called Catan. And Catan says, comforts her and says, everything's going to be okay. You can stay here with me, or I can send you back. But if I send you back, there's going to be a price to pay. So the price that will be paid will be that Catan will have to take Prairie's sight. And then we flash forward, and Prairie wakes up, and she's with her Russian dad, and her dad then sends her off to America to live with her auntie, who lives in what can only be described as some sort of whorehouse or something. So later on, she's adopted by Nancy and Abel, and they take good care of her, and it's a weird one how they find her. Like, they go to actually adopt a baby, but Nancy goes upstairs and finds Prairie trying to look after the baby, realizes she's blind, and decides that she wants to adopt Prairie because she feels as though that Prairie would always need Nancy. So they realize that her name is Mina, and Nancy renames her Prairie, and that's where she gets that name from. So Prairie leads a happy life in her new home at Nancy and Abel, and Nancy and Abel are loving parents, and they do their absolute best to make her feel welcome. But she still has these premonitions, these nightmares, and they're specifically of her dad, and that he's in trouble with the mafia, and they are concerned, so they send her to a psychiatrist, to a doctor, and he says that she could be suffering from early signs of psychosis. So this is kind of a juncture in the TV show that makes you ask questions like, is this girl mentally ill, or does she actually have some supernatural powers, and is she able to see things that normal people aren't? So from then on, Prairie's medicated, and she still has these premonitions. We learned earlier on that her dad was killed, but she's having premonitions that he's alive and that he's waiting in New York for her to come find him. So when she reaches the age of 21, she runs away essentially, and she goes to New York City, to the Statue of Liberty, to try and find him. And she waits for a full day. She obviously gets the morning ferry out, and he doesn't arrive. And she waits until night, and he's still not there. So the security guard at the Statue of Liberty says, unfortunately, you have to get on the next ferry. You can't stay here overnight. And she's pretty heartbroken. And she makes her way back. So obviously she's thinking about going back to Nancy and Abel. When she gets to the subway station, she's a pretty accomplished violinist. So she takes out her violin and starts to play in the hopes that her dad will hear her and come find her. So here we're introduced to the character of Hap, who seems like a nice guy. He comes up to Prairie and says, "That's beautiful music you're playing." And then out of nowhere, he kind of asks her, "Have you had a near-death experience?" Almost like he's can spot this, or he's aware of people that have. And Prairie's pretty shocked by this, so she tells him, "Yes, I have, when I was a child. And I get premonitions as well." So Hap invites her to dinner, and he's very charming and a really nice guy, and takes her to dinner and starts talking to her about work he's doing. He says he's a physician, that he works studying near-death experiences with a group of people. So Prairie agrees to go with Hap. He's also a pilot as well as a doctor, and she goes with him to his house, and straight away he's still being charming, and he takes her downstairs and leads her into a room where he says the work is being done, and he says, "You must be tired, Prairie, so come in here to this room and take a nap, have a rest." And then he locks the door behind her, and this is where we get an insight into what exactly Hap is doing. So Prairie is locked in against her will, and we're getting into really kind of dangerous territory, I suppose. It makes your heart sink a little bit, realizing that there's more people in there, that they're being kept captive against their will, and we learn that there's no way out for them, and that Hap is holding people against their will. So this is definitely not a direction I thought that this show would be taking. So we're introduced to a character called Homer, Scott, and then also Rachel. And there's another captive that has recently passed away due to experiments that Hap is performing on them. And this is all to do with near-death experiences, and he calls it great work. But it's bizarre. Like, I just didn't expect the show to take this direction at all, and it's really pretty freaky stuff. Like, it makes your heart sink and all sorts of emotions go on. And straight away you can see that Homer and Prairie have an instant connection, and they bond straight away, and they've all kind of accepted their fate, as it were. Prairie is brand new into this situation, and she wants to fight it a bit. And the rest of the group that are listening to this story are just blown away by it, really, at this stage. Like, they just feel such a connection to Prairie. They believe everything that she's saying, and they just think that she's amazing, the things that she's been through. And it's just an incredible story. And I guess this is what I love about this show so much. So it's really asking you to make a call now at this stage. Is this just a story that Prairie is telling people? Like, does she go through some other trauma, or, has she been through this, ordeal throughout her life, or when she was missing? It's incredible stuff, really, absolutely incredible. So Hap allows Prairie, and only Prairie, to come out from, like, the cages or dungeons or whatever you want to call it, probably because she's blind, and she cooks for him one night, not knowing he's allergic to tomatoes, and he has an anaphylactic shock about it, and he's able to inject himself with an epidural, and he's okay. But when Prairie goes back to the others, she's extremely upset, and they try and comfort her. So there's a lot of bonding between, the four captives at this point. But they hatch a plan, essentially, for Prairie to escape. So Prairie, when she's up with Hap one particular afternoon, strikes him and knocks him down the stairs, and smashes the window of the house, and makes a run for it to escape captivity, and raise the alarm for the others. So Prairie runs for her life. Not very much she can do, being that she's blind. So Hap finds her and knocks her unconscious. And then Prairie suddenly finds herself in an open field, and she's visiting Cartoon again, who I guess is like her guardian angel. And her guardian angel says, "Come sit with me, take a rest. You've suffered enough now, my child," I think is what she says. You can stay here with me and no longer feel the pain of life. And Prairie also says, I can see in here, and Catherine says that you can always see. You've always been able to see. So Catherine says, "You can stay here with me and your father," and she tells Prairie to look outside the window, that her father's there waiting for her, and that she can stay and, be in peace for the rest of existence. But Prairie decides to go back, and Catherine says, "Well, if you make that choice, I have to take something from you." And this time it's more pain and suffering is what she has to give up. So she's returned to Hap, and she's returned to captivity after the near-death experience, but miraculously she has her sight back, and this absolutely freaks the guys out that are the other captives. They don't know what to make of it, and that's a story about how Prairie got her sight back. So it's, for me, this first part of the review has taken almost 20 minutes. There's so much to this show. I absolutely love it. Like, so the OA stands for the original angel, and that's what Prairie could be. It's pretty incredible stuff. I love the show so far. So I guess the question is, what does this all mean, or what is this show about? There's so much crazy shit going on. There's a couple of theories out there, and the theories are A, that she's mentally ill, suffering from psychosis. B, she's in a coma. Or C, that everything she's saying is real. I personally, after watching the full entire show, have a pretty good understanding as to what is going on, and my thoughts are that, what she is saying is the truth to her, if I can say it like that. But I'd be really interested in hearing what you guys think about it, or what you thought about the show, if you liked it. So just drop a comment below and let me know what you think.